The day my brother asked me that question still feels unreal. His voice was soft, almost hesitant, but the words hit me harder than anything since my husband's death. I remember staring at him, wondering if I'd misheard. But to understand why it shook me so deeply, you have to know what my life had been like leading up to that moment. 6 months earlier, I was standing in black at my husband's funeral, holding myself together for the sake of appearances while inside, I was breaking apart. We'd been married for 8 years, and then, in an instant, he was gone. An accident no one could have predicted, leaving me with bills, an empty house, and a silence that seemed to follow me everywhere. The weeks after the funeral blurred together. I'd wake up in the middle of the night and instinctively reach for the other side of the bed, only to find it cold. Meals became optional. Conversations felt like meaningless background noise. My family tried to help, but most didn't know what to say. My brother was different. He came over often, sometimes bringing groceries, sometimes just sitting with me while I cried or stared blankly at the TV. He told me I didn't have to explain anything to him, but he understood. I started to believe he was the only one who truly did. It became normal to see him every other day. He fixed things around the house, mowed the lawn, even replaced a leaky faucet my husband had meant to get to. We'd talk for hours about nothing and everything, childhood memories, my late husband's quirks, the kind of music we used to listen to as kids. He made me laugh at a time when laughter felt impossible. I leaned on him more than I should have, maybe more than I realized at the time. Looking back, there were moments I brushed off as innocent, but that now seemed different. His hand lingering on mine when he passed me a cup of tea. The way his gaze would hold just a little too long when I caught him looking at me. Late-night texts that stretched past midnight, filled with comfort, but edged with something I couldn't quite name. I told myself it was just closeness, the bond of shared grief. I didn't see what was coming. One evening, as we sat together talking about how different life had become, he paused in a way that made me uneasy. His eyes searched mine, like he was weighing whether to speak. Then, almost casually, he said he'd been thinking about something for a while. He told me he hated seeing me alone, and believed there was a way for us to keep the family closer, to take care of each other in a way no one else could. At first, I thought he meant moving in to help around the house, or visiting more often. But then his meaning became unmistakable. He wasn't talking about support in the way a brother usually offers it. He was suggesting that we be together, not as siblings but as partners. I froze, convinced it had to be some misguided attempt at a joke. I laughed weakly, waiting for him to laugh too. But he didn't. His expression stayed serious, almost tender, as if what he'd said was perfectly reasonable. He told me he had always felt a special connection with me, even before my husband died, and that now circumstances had given us the freedom to explore it. He said he could make me happy again, that my late husband would have wanted me to find comfort. His voice was steady, but his words twisted in my stomach like a knot tightening. I felt a strange mix of emotions, shock, confusion, and an unsettling sense of flattery I hated myself for feeling. Loneliness had been gnawing at me for months. And here was someone offering closeness, companionship, and even love. But it was coming from the one person it should never come from. He insisted we wouldn't be hurting anyone, that we could keep it private. He painted a picture of shared dinners, quiet nights, and never having to face the world alone again. I tried to find the words to push back, to remind him of boundaries, but my thoughts were tangled. A part of me wanted to shut the conversation down immediately. Yet another part lingered on the idea of not feeling so unbearably alone. His tone, the way he looked at me, it all made the line between right and wrong blur for a fleeting, dangerous moment. After that conversation, something between us shifted. We didn't speak openly about what he'd said, but it lingered in the air, changing the way we moved around each other. I found myself noticing things I had ignored before. The way his voice softened when he spoke to me, the way his presence seemed to fill the empty spaces in my home. I told myself I was overthinking, but my guard was already slipping. He began staying later into the night, and I stopped questioning it. Sometimes he would fall asleep on the couch, and I didn't ask him to leave. I told myself it was harmless, but the truth is, I was getting used to the comfort of not being alone. Small gestures grew into something heavier. A hand brushing against mine no longer felt accidental. When he leaned closer to share something, his breath lingered on my skin a little too long. One night, while talking in low voices, he reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind my ear. The touch sent a shiver through me, not just because of its intimacy, but because I didn't pull away. I should have. Instead, I let the moment stretch, neither of us breaking the silence. That was when the first kiss happened, slow, hesitant, and heavy with meaning. We both pretended not to acknowledge it afterward. Guilt rushed in immediately. I dreamed of my late husband, imagined his face if he could see me. In daylight, I promised myself it wouldn't happen again. But the closeness was already tangled into my days. We shared more lingering touches, more quiet exchanges that carried the weight of what had begun. I avoided telling anyone about the increasing frequency of his visits, deleting certain messages before they could be read by curious eyes. The secrecy only deepened the strange pull I felt toward him. I told myself we were still grieving, that grief made people act strangely, that maybe this was just a temporary madness. But each time I looked at him, I could see the unspoken agreement in his eyes. We had crossed a line we couldn't uncross. And I couldn't decide whether I was being pulled into something I wanted, or something I should have run from the moment it began.